Let's clear up some relatively recent speculation regarding the White Sox pursuit of a new ballpark with my guest on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welcher, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, I spoke with WBBM's Rob Hart to discuss the notion that the White Sox keep pushing when it comes to getting a new stadium. That is, they need a neighborhood around the ballpark. Also wanted to discuss some other business dealings that are happening with the White Sox. Then I want to discuss how it'd be nice for the Sox to have someone who strikes fear into the heart of the division rivals, and also why we've got to stop getting so upset about the recent lineups. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Rob, first of all, you look very relaxed on your vacation right now. I really appreciate you taking the time to joining me today. So, Rob, why is there this misguided view that owners need to have like this neighborhood around their potential new stadiums?
Well, I think it really is a function of a lot of trends that we're seeing across professional sports, beginning with the fact that the cable bundle that was a source of free money for all teams, not just baseball teams, but everybody who had that regional sports package. That cable bundle is starting to dry up and disappear. Cable penetration, which at one time was 80 or 90% not too long ago. And in that scenario, cable customers were buying at least one, $35, $36 ticket to a local sporting event, whether they were a fan or not, just to have access to local the regional sports network that came as part of the cable package. And as that money begins to dry up, they have to look for new sources of revenue. And the newest source of revenue that everyone's trying to get is that ballpark village. You see it in Boston. You see it in what the Ricketts have done with the neighborhood around Wrigley Field, and the latest and greatest example is the Battery Ballpark Village around the new Atlanta Braves Stadium in suburban Atlanta. So the thought is, instead of people spending money on cable TV, they will spend money. The team will get money from bars and restaurants and entertainment venues and maybe apartment buildings that are around the stadium, as opposed to just all that cable TV money that's coming in. So that's part of the reason why I think the White Sox want to have that ballpark village. And I would imagine the 78 parcel is very attractive to them because it is essentially a blank canvas. And maybe that entire parcel of land could be not only a stadium as the anchor, but apartments and and entertainment venues and a movie theater and restaurants and things like that that could all eventually be diverted into the team, taking the place of the money that was coming in from Comcast Sportsnet or NBC Sports Chicago.
I think the one thing though, when you quote tweeted, like, because I put out on Twitter for the background, I put on the Twitter when I heard on Bob Nightingale saying basically, the White Sox should try to move closer to Soldier Field, and I said, well, there's plenty of vacant land around Wright Field, and how you pointed out, there's only a few teams in baseball right now that, as you said, that is starting to utilize that. The thing is it seems like there is already a neighborhood around Wright Field. It's just that Jerry just never invested in it, and
Well,
it
I
seems
think
like. Oh, go
I
ahead.
mean, part of it is, Jerry is not, no one's ever going to accuse Jerry Reinsdorf of being a visionary thinker. He has had a lot of good business ideas that are good business ideas in a vacuum. But as we've seen, when they're implemented, they uh, are disastrous for the brand and the business of the White Sox. And this goes all the way back to putting the games on extremely hard to find pay TV in the early 80s, when the other team in town was basically giving away the games to Channel 9 at a very discounted rate, and putting the games on coast to coast cable for essentially nothing and turning the Cubs into a national brand. Meanwhile, the White Sox are on Sports Vision and are a secret in their own town. And you can extend that to New Comiskey Park, which, yes, was built to address a lot of fan issues with the old park. But the big thing about the new park was skyboxes and the club level. That was supposed to be the biggest source of revenue of the new ballpark. And of course, meanwhile, the century-old ballpark on the other side of town was treated with tender, loving care and turned into a landmark. So that just goes to show you a little bit about, Jerry's belief. Solid business decisions that make sense on paper, but when they meet the light of day, they don't stand up to the same kind of scrutiny. So when it comes to the neighborhood around Rate Field, I don't think the team has really explored the potential that exists there. And I say this as somebody who lived there for 5 years. It's a residential neighborhood. It's a middle-class residential neighborhood. It's there are families who have lived there for multiple generations. But at the same time, though, it is also for a lot of immigrant families, especially Chinese immigrant families who may have moved out of Chinatown and are looking to grab their own piece of the American dream through home ownership. Bridgeport is now the first stop into a long life in America. So it's a dynamic neighborhood. It's an interesting neighborhood with a lot of history. People who've been there for a long time, people who have just moved in a couple of years ago. I think that's what makes it very interesting. And on top of that, if you wanted to develop the land around the ballpark, give back some of those parking lots and turn it into a mixed-use development, you could do that for a fraction of the cost you're going to spend in the 78. And on top of that, you have all this infrastructure already in place. It is on it has an expressway off-ramp at 35th Street. It has 2 CTA stops, the Red Line and the Green Line. It has connections to Metra. It's very close to downtown. The thing that always kind of drives me batty when talking about just the disadvantage of the neighborhood around Guaranteed Rate Field is that the Sox play at 3,500 South, and that is apparently a liability. But the other team in town plays at 3,600 North, and that is the most valuable real estate in America. So I don't think the lack of potential that people say exists around the ballpark is not because of the neighborhood itself. It's just because that potential has never really been realized and never really been allowed to flourish.
And that's why I wanted you on, and that's why I'm glad that you quote tweeted me on that. And that's why I was like, I got to get the smartest guy in the room because I always believe you're the smartest guy
Well, you
around.
notice this is a very empty room. That's how I.
Yeah. But I was like, I got to get Rob on because he knows this in detail. Because again, you've lived in the neighborhood, you are a diehard Sox fan on that, and you're very well informed on that. And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, why aren't they exploring for fraction of the cost? I mean, I get if you want to try to go big, go big. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, you still have a very viable ballpark that you can just develop and make money. And that's the thing that I want to ask you is, I keep hearing the White Sox being this sleeping giant of a franchise. Couldn't it just be woken up then with new ownership?
I think that really is the case. I mean, I will give you the good about Jerry Reinsdorf. And that is, I think he really does love the game of baseball, and he seems to be respected among owners. And going into 1981, when he purchased the team, there was a lot of talk about new owners moving into Denver, new owners moving into New Orleans, new owners moving them out of town. And yeah, he did pull the "we're going to move" card for Tampa in order to get the new Guaranteed Rate Field built. But as far as the other owners of the White Sox are concerned, and that includes Bill Veeck and the Allens, and even 2 generations of Comiskey's, he's been one of the better ones, which doesn't really say much about White Sox ownership. But I do think, looking at the Ishbias, I know they're under the microscope for the way things have turned out with the Suns, but they're aggressive. they are. Even with the Suns failing to make the playoffs and with a very bleak draft picture for the team, they're very willing to shake things up. They are very willing to bring in new basketball operations people to kind of get them out of this mess, which is something unheard of. As far as the White Sox are concerned, I mean, Jerry has the people he likes, and uh, they are deputized to run his teams. Results be damned. So I think if the Ishbias do come in sooner rather than later, they will be very aggressive. I mean, I would imagine, let's say hypothetically, if if the if Matt and Justin are given a greater say, even though they're not the general partners, if they're given a greater say in the direction of the team going forward, the first thing they should do is be very aggressive about Kyle Tucker uh, going into next season, just to demonstrate to the rest of baseball that this team is here and it can take big swings. I mean, very similar to what the Texas Rangers did after 2021 in making a big splash in free agency. And yeah, it didn't work in 22, but they won a World Series in 23. So that's the type of aggressiveness that you need out of a ball club like the White Sox, which above, they have a lot of issues, but one of them is really fixing the perception problem that they have.
Quick timeout for those listening on Apple or Spotify, but I'll be back with more of my conversation with Rob Hart after the break. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite TV shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And I rock a couple of smart TVs with Fire TV built in, and also the rest of the TVs in the house. I got a Fire TV stick to make sure I can have 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from my favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, and Disney Plus. Plus, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, which allows me to take it with me when I travel so my daughter can still watch all her favorite shows. And now I can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So, being the business host on WBBM, you've obviously done a lot of reporting on business in general. Just what have you ever heard about Justin Ishbia as the businessman? I mean, would we getting like this, as you said, aggressive owner, or maybe is he aloof? Is he like Matt Ishbia, where he's just absolutely crazy? I mean, I don't know what you've heard.
Well, I think in this situation, Justin would be the active White Sox guy. Matt would be the investor, and you don't. Half of their wealth comes from the fund he invests in. The other half comes from the real estate company, the lending company that their family owns. Um, I look at it this way: it does make the Nashville story a little less likely. I'm not going to say it's totally off the table, but it's a little. The odds of the Chicago White Sox staying in Chicago grew a little bit when the Ishbia deal was announced, because you don't abandon your bid to buy the Minnesota Twins outright and then go purchase a large stake in the White Sox because you eventually want to move them to Nashville. You want to be first in line when a major market ball club is is made available eventually, and I think that's his play. And I think they do see the White Sox as an undervalued asset, much like all of us. I mean, I think the problem with the White Sox is it's not playing a 35th in Shields. It's just been decades and decades and decades of small ball, decades of business decisions that make sense on paper but don't make sense in real life. And with a new set of eyes and a 21st century mindset, it could potentially be transformative.
Yeah, what the Ishbias remind me of, it reminds me a lot of, and you got your start in Milwaukee, is when the Bucks. I mean, obviously it happened after you left, but when Herb Cole, I mean, he was kind of the same in Jerry Reinsdorf. He tried, he loved basketball, but a lot of his decisions just never worked out well. And then Edens and Landry come in, realizing, hey, there's a really untapped market here of where we can develop, build our new stadium and develop the land around this new stadium. So we're going to come in, and Herb Cole was like, I'm fine with that. It gets a little frustrating that Jerry can't have that self-reflective to go, you know what? It's not working out for me anymore. I need to get out and sell to these guys who really want to try.
Well, speaking of ball club owners in Milwaukee, the Herb Cole comparison does make some sense, but the guy who really this really reminds me of is the Brewers towards the end of the Sealing ownership. Bud was the commissioner by that point, and everything was in the blind trust, and the family owned the team. But you know, you Bud was in the same situation. He managed to get the state legislature to fund a new ballpark, a replacement for County Stadium that was paid for with sales tax revenue, and with the belief that now that we have a big time modern ballpark, we can go after free agents. And then they're mediocre in 2001, they're terrible in 2002. They backed up the truck every July 31st. Remember Richie Sexton going to Arizona for a package of prospects. And then Ulyss Payne quitting as the president of the Brewers because he didn't want to cut payroll again. And then there was a Real Sports segment, you may recall, about the whole Miller Park Stadium drama, and state lawmakers saying, like, okay, we're taxpayers are funding this stadium for a team that said we're going to spend more money on the product. Why are they cutting payroll? And lo and behold, that all parties say it was merely a coincidence, but within a matter of months, the Sea Leagues announced the team was up for sale, and Aunt Nasio came in, and modern thinking was allowed to come into the Milwaukee Brewers franchise. And it's the Brewers attract 3 million people a year consistently. They're a competitive team year in, year out, and even I think it's safe to say that the Cubs are probably a World Series contender or even a World Series champion at this point for 2025. But the Brewers are going to play them close all the way, and with a fraction of the payroll, because they just have a smarter baseball team that just did not exist under Bud. Because just as much as Jerry loved his hometown Brooklyn Dodgers, uh, Bud loved the Braves and Henry Aaron and that brand and style of baseball, and it just did not work. It didn't work in 2001, and it certainly doesn't work today.
Yeah, and I mean, also, I think Bud came to the realization he just wasn't rich enough to own the team anymore, and they had to get somebody in there with money. Now, Jerry obviously is rich enough to own the team, but to be fair to him, it looks like the revenue pie is going to be shrinking with the CHSN still not being on Comcast. Do you find it ironic, as you said earlier, that he leaves free TV to go on to Sports Vision? He kind of pioneers this RSN model, and now it sounds like they might be going back to over the air and looking at WGN as a lifeboat.
Well, I think this is a problem that everybody is having with the cable TV bundle. I mean, that is what made cable uh, an absolute fountain of cash for so long. Was that subscribers would pay for what was previously a free product because you would get channels you don't get anywhere else. And then in the 90s, uh, regulations changed so that if you had a channel, you received retransmission fees. It became a huge source of revenue for local television. It became a huge source of revenue for sports. It became there's no coincidence that within a couple of years you had digital cable, and all of a sudden you had 7 Discovery channels, and then you had 7 iterations of the Learning Channel, and it was all because everybody wanted to take advantage of this torrent of retransmission fees that were available. And so you see this every couple of months or so. Um, Channel 9 is on DirecTV, or stations owned by this particular entity will not be available on your cable system because they're always at odds over the retransmission fees, and they just keep going down. So I think there was a point at which the retransmission fees were a gold mine. The Dodgers, the Angels, the Houston Astros, all reached billion with a B dollar deals with their regional sports partners in 2010 and 2011, and those were 20-year packs, and I'm guessing all of them are underwater now, but you can't do that anymore. And I think we the with CHSN, they thought, well, we have the Bulls, we have the Blackhawks, we have the White Sox, because we have three teams that are popular that people want to see. We'll have leverage in negotiations with the cable providers, and Xfinity has their leverage as far as their size is concerned, and they're neither side is willing to budge. And I'm guessing the Channel 9 thing is putting some pressure on the cable company, saying like, well, we really don't need you guys anymore. And it's kind of an interesting crossroads for over the air broadcast television, because everything is streaming now. The only properties that make over the air broadcast television attractive is football, and sooner or later the NFL is going to reach a pact with the streamer for the Sunday schedule, and that's going to radically change what's left of broadcast television. So yeah, now they're back where they were, where where the Sox are on an inaccessible cable channel for most of their schedule, but instead of in the early '80s when 20 or 30 games were on channel 32, they could potentially be on channel 9, and channel 9 is also in need of programming, because I think you and I both remember, Channel 9 was the Cubs, it was the White Sox, it was the Bulls. And then before the WB, it was like movies every night. And if all those movies, the Guns of Navarone and Casablanca and all those staples of the Channel 9 schedule way back when, like everything else, are available on your phone.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always believed the one idea that I would say if I'm an owner, if I can't get the streamers to carry my games, I would just buy like a WCIU, for example, and zombie it and just carry my games, and then that way I can get my Trojan horse onto these providers. That's just a theory that I've had, but I do like how they are thinking. Okay, we got to figure out some way to get available, but it's just ironic that the guy that pioneered the RSNs is now going back to. Now that the team that he, the station that he says, well, that's how the Cubs became, prevalent, because WGN just built them up. I just find it ironic how they're doing that. But Rob, I want you to get back on your vacation. I really appreciate your time, and I thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, the northwest suburbs are lovely at this time of year.
All right, Byron Buxton continues to destroy the White Sox, and let's discuss how it would be nice if Chicago had a player who struck fear in the hearts of their division rivals, along with let's stop getting so upset about these lineups, and that's after the break on Locked On White Sox. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live, the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of the ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last minute deals, all in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Gametime gets closer, meaning you can score incredible deals. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On. As the Brewers come to Rate Field next week, I can count on them to help grab tickets that meet my needs. The Game Time Picks feature makes finding the best deals effortless. It filters out the fluff and highlights the top discounts in the stadium. And I love that I can preview my exact seat before purchasing. No bad surprises when I get to the stadium. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. And recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. So I want to kill two birds with one stone in this segment. And the first one is Byron Buxton harmed the White Sox first with his glove and then with his bat. He made that amazing catch to rob Andrew Benintendi of a possible game-tying double, and then he crushed a 2-run home run last night to seal the Twins' 6-3 victory. They say he's injury-prone, but he always seems healthy enough to play the White Sox. And then he always seems healthy enough to rip the heart out of the White Sox. Jose Ramirez, Bobby Witt Jr., Salvador Perez, Stephen Kwan, Kerry Carpenter. These are all guys on division rivals who absolutely destroy White Sox pitching. And you know what would be nice? The White Sox had some hitters that struck fear in the hearts of the AL Central too. And you don't see that with this team. You don't see the Central going, oh no, White Sox got that dude. They got this guy. They don't have that guy like Buxton and Ramirez and Witt Jr. and Perez and Kwan and Carpenter. Think about it. The most established bats in the White Sox lineup, Luis Robert Jr., Andrew Benintendi, and Andrew Vaughn, they don't exactly send other teams' social media accounts into a fury. Other teams' social media worlds like, oh my gosh, he's done it again. Vaughn's slash line against Cleveland, 225, 279, 369. Kansas City, 264, 321, 458. Detroit, 268, 308, 412. Minnesota, 273, 336, 458. Again, Cleveland, he's just useless. Kansas City, Detroit, Minnesota, okay. Not like, oh, this guy's going to wreck us. 34 home runs against the division. That's just 11 more home runs than Buxton has in his entire career against the White Sox. Now, granted, Buxton's been playing since 2015, and Vaughn's only been in the league since 2021. But still, you just would love for the White Sox to have a guy that just strikes fear. Luis Robert Jr. slash line against Cleveland, 296, 348, 489. Okay. Kind of haunts the Guardians, maybe. But he's hitting under 200 against the Twins at the time of this recording, 234 against the Tigers, and 253 against the Royals. And he has just 29 career home runs against the division. And he's been around since 2020. Andrew Benintendi, granted he was a free agent addition and he actually played for KC, but he's about the only one who qualifies for doing damage against the AL Central with his career numbers, but it's still not like those gut-wrenching, like he's just ripping the heart out of you, like Buxton and Ramirez always do. And I'm just saying that would be a nice bar for these young core players to clear. And one of those bars is wreak havoc on the division. And these are teams that you're playing a third of the schedule against, and teams that are hypothetically going to be getting in your way of getting to the playoffs. And again, I mean when I say the young players, I'm talking about the possible future next good team in 2027 and beyond. So, you would like to see these core prospects. Like, you'd love to see Edgar Carroll turn into like this just boogeyman for the Minnesota Twins. You'd love to see Kyle Teal just absolutely haunt the Kansas City Royals. You would like to see the Detroit Tigers be like, oh man, we got to face Colson Montgomery today. Or Braden Montgomery absolutely wrecking the Cleveland Guardians. You would just love to see that. But instead we got Jacob Amaya hitting ninth. And so weakly that Bobby Dahlbeck had to pinch hit for him and then play short. You just want to see that. And then I did see on, X formerly Twitter, a lot of people were not happy with Joshua Pistachios hitting leadoff last night. And I do envision the White Sox data and analytics department. I understand they had some upgrades, but I feel like the upgrades, like they went from an Apple IIe to a iMac. Maybe, or even I'm being too generous. Maybe they were using like one of those old IBMs against the wall that you had to crank, and they upgraded to the actual Apple IIe. Long live Oregon Trail. But whatever computer they used last night spit out Joshua Pistachios hitting leadoff. And I saw a lot on the social media world. Nobody was too pleased. Also, Jacob Amaya was in the lineup, and I saw a lot of fury there. But remember, before you start thinking that Will Venable has lost his mind, it's well known these days, the manager is no longer solely filling out the lineup card. Okay? It's usually a collaborative effort with the front office and the R&D guys doing it. And we got to say research and development to make certain people in White Sox world happy. The owner, for example. So, and I do believe Will Venable is a more modern thinking manager where I don't think he's like, Pedro Gaffal and Tony La Russa, for example, you could say they were probably just doing like, what are you thinking? Like type stuff because it's going to work. I think Will on the other side where he gets some graces is I think he's really embraced modern thought, and that is it's a collaborative effort filling out the lineup card. So you can question whatever data those guys are pulling all you want, but remember, lineup card overlord is no longer the manager's manager responsibility. It's mostly one part clubhouse vibe manager, basically HR guy, keeping everything cool and calm. One part making sure everyone's prepared to play the game in front of them, and one part pushing the right button, in-game figurative buttons. That's it. And Pistachios hitting leadoff actually turned out okay. 1 for 3 with a walk and a run scored. But that's not why I'm not tackling the subject. I'm here to tell you, and I'm not here to tell you how to fan. I'm just trying to maybe pass along that when you see the lineup, take a breath and realize Will Venable and even the R&D guys, they don't have much to work with right now. They just don't. Mike Tauchman, and even when they have stuff to work with, it's not like, yay. And this is what we were prepared for. And maybe it's just hard to watch. Like it's actually hard to see in real time. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on the national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'll be back tomorrow with a crossover episode with Locked On A's. This time, we're going to see if Booney can clarify if Tyler Soderstrom will ever be available on the trade market, like some Sox fans are clamoring for. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion with WBBM's Rob Hart. The White Sox not having a hitter that strikes fear into the hearts of division rivals and just easing up on maybe not getting so frustrated with lineup decisions. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox. Or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.